Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's such a delight to welcome Charmi Patel to the Wonder Woman podcast. It's been a while since I recorded the next, episode of this podcast. Though Charmi and I have spoken about it, I think months back, and we said, yes, you need to come to the podcast. It has taken some time to align our calendars. A very, very warm welcome to you, Charmi. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Shivangi. Great. Thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast. It's an honor. I've been, following Wonder Woman, but also your Thrive and sort of networking and mentoring aspects. So thank you so much. It feels great to be here.
Yes, and thanks for being a Thrive mentor in Edinburgh. When people introduce you, Sharmi, they often begin with, you're a professor, you're an associate dean, you're a researcher, you're an exec education leader. But if you were to introduce yourself from the inside out, what would you want us to understand about you first?
Mm, I would say, one word to understand, it's that I am just unapologetically becoming, So it's this process of becoming over and above all these titles that you so generously have bestowed upon me, Shivangi. But as a woman who left India at the age of 19, without any map, without any guidance, without any mentor, without any sponsor, and just going with a deep instinct of a larger world that was waiting for me, or I at least thought was waiting for me as sort of a first generation woman of color who had to learn not only how to succeed, but navigate a world that was not hers to begin with. That's what I felt. I think, yeah, I'm just unapologetically becoming, which resonates with me so much that, it's about really actively growing into sort of the truest version of myself without sort of really shrinking to fit to others' expectations or feeling any kind of, remorse for my authentic needs and what I bring to the table. So that's what I say, unapologetically becoming.
Yeah, wonderful. I mean, this is the term that I use in Wonder Woman, as you know, that I say the first few phases of when we leave our home country and are
Mm.
functioning in, our chosen country is about just, making that call, braving. And then we are building for the next few years. And then that's the phase that you and me are in, right? We are becoming. I'm really wondering, as you have built your credibility, in this, country of your choice, in the institutions, in academia, in various sectors,
Mm.
what did that ask of you personally? Especially when you were still becoming, in terms of becoming credible, let's say,
Mm. Mm.
in rooms which are not built with someone like you in mind.
Yeah, I would say, you know, a very odd word or a very odd thing for people like us, where, personally, where, you didn't belong, but you also didn't have the access. The opportunity of access was not there. You had to navigate all of that. I would say it demands a great deal of stamina, right? Um, and I can't clearly find another metaphor for stamina, right? Like a lot of people, especially, women who have made it, especially women of color, often talk about things like grit and resilience and things like that. I think there's something else, grit is completely something else, resilience is something else. But in the early years, where credibility did not feel like something I automatically possessed, especially in an academic world, that goes by pedigree, right, Shivangi? So it depends on who you know, who your parents were, if you came from that kind of education background. So many things count. I think to navigate that kind of world where you were not prepared enough, but you were not even told about that world. So, like, for example, I never knew what publishing was. I never knew what journals was. I never knew what rankings in universities was, and why certain universities had a bigger and better brand and name over other universities. No, like it was just very unheard for. So yeah, it just requires a great deal of stamina, to know when to prepare, how much to prepare, sometimes over prepare. Personally, that's what happened with me. Trying to be too disciplined, too resilient, too having too much grit. So yeah, it just required a lot of stamina to over time, call this my space. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, and this is interesting that you mentioned over preparing, right? I mean, at your core, I think you remain a researcher. I
Hmm.
think that that's quite fascinating for me because there's a parallel I draw with Brené Brown, and she also says, at my core, I remain a researcher. And
Right.
I think that is a known pitfall, right? If you are a
Mm,
researcher, you can overdo something. Now,
mm,
you're somebody who looks at well being, work, human systems, right? And I'm just
mm,
wondering, how has that been like? What's the juxtaposition between understanding all of this, the theory
mm.
behind it, and how it manifests itself, from your eyes as a researcher, and this whole idea of what I call a Wonder Woman, a high skilled immigrant woman? How are these meeting, and what are you finding, discovering about yourself as these two identities meet with each other?
Yeah, I think such a beautiful question, Shivangi, right? Like I mean, let me start with a very, very honest reflection that it definitely took a very long time for the researcher and the woman to meet each other, right? And I'll explain you that. So as a researcher, and I think I'm still struggling to some that extent, right? As researchers, we are very good at analyzing systems, as you rightly put, Brené Brown's example, you look at systems from a distance as if you are almost designing them but are not part of it. So we tend to over analyze and write about burnout and well-being and dignity and voice and inclusion and mentoring, sponsoring or human sustainability or intellectual clarity and all of that. But living those principles in our own lives is much harder. And I would say I've seen this with right now, because since this is a Woman thing, I've seen this with a lot of women academics, right? I have known women academics who research on women's leadership and succession planning and boards, and they have been some of the most difficult women when it comes to having them mentor other women or sponsor other women. They have been the women who have stopped other women's, success or promotion at work, for example, right? And that is where that walk the talk is obviously missing, because somewhere them as a person and them as a researcher has never reconciled with each other. So for a long time, I think I understood well-being conceptually before I practice it personally, right? Like I could see, or the strange irony of being a well-being scholar, or I was working on this sleep paper. I'll just give an example with Professor Christopher Barnes, right? And Stefan Wok. So Stefan is in Australia and Sydney, and Christopher Barnes is at Seattle, Washington University. And it was so funny that I remember sending an email at a very odd time. So it must have been 3 a.m. in UK time. I was that time at with University of Reading. And I remember Stefan replying to me, and he's like, Charmi, I cannot work on sleep with you if you don't sleep on time. Like I can't do this research with you if you yourself are, on the opposite spectrum of well-being and sleep and chronotype and the kind of research we are doing. So yes, it's taken time over time, to understand well-being in its true sense, because as people say, body keeps the score. So the body often tells the truth more than your CV does, in terms of the body knows when success is becoming too expensive, or when hard work or over preparation is becoming too expensive. So in that sense, yes, now I think about well-being not as a self-care in a superficial sense, but truly as a sustainability concept, because I sort of learned about it. I sort of now understand I can do meaningful work without abandoning myself. I can build a life where there is ambition, but I can still mentor, sponsor other people, help other women also climb up the ladder just the way I climbed, right? So I would say there is still, a practice. This is still, work in progress, not a destination. But yeah, I've only now sort of reconciled the woman and the researcher in me together. Yeah.
Wonderful. Shami, was there a period in your career where the outside world would have said, oh, she's doing so brilliantly, but internally you still felt uncertain, lonely, unfinished?
Yeah, absolutely. I still do. I think, mine and your private conversations have been all about that. The recent Thrive mentoring event in Edinburgh, where we were talking about menopause, right? And, Muge and the team, Charmaine, Muge, Ibru, fantastic ladies, sort of invited me and said, no, just let us know some of the latest research, even if it's not your research, if you can compile something, and talk about a real issue of menopause at work and, menopause and navigating that. And once I spoke all that, Shivangi, strangely, like at the end of the thing, everybody, right? Like I mean, I got tons of LinkedIn requests that night, which is fantastic, but also tons of compliment. Oh, we love the way you speak. We love the way you put things together. It was so simple. It was so effective. And yet, all of those things were so hard to believe, right? Like from the outside. So academia in itself is very critical, Academia is, very self-deprecating, in so many ways. And therefore, you always feel uncertain. You always feel lowly. You somehow always feel unfinished just because there are goalposts. And I think we as women of color, I think I'm sure a lot of women are going to relate to that. That the minute we have finished one goalpost, which was okay, I have to do something better. I have to get out of Mumbai, get myself a great degree from a great institute, become a researcher, do this. Every time we achieve one goal, our next goalpost is always ready for us. So it's like I have not yet celebrated this because you have not come to terms with the fact that I had this goal, I have accomplished this goal. I should celebrate this goal for a moment, or at least a couple of moments, and then reach to my next goal, or then have my next goal post ready, right? So, in that
Yeah,
sense,
and that is a high achiever syndrome. I mean, I think in
exactly,
some ways, though, it's like the high achiever then meets all of these challenges of being a high
exactly,
skilled immigrant woman, right? So I think that then
exactly,
accentuates. I mean, I speak about intersectionality in terms of
correct,
anti-immigration bias and
correct, yeah,
gender and
yeah,
ethnicity, and but then there is this whole other thing you're bringing in, which is this high
hmm,
achiever syndrome, where you
correct,
continuously, whatever you have achieved,
hmm,
feel as if you could do more. And there's always
hmm.
these moving goalposts, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, as you rightly beautifully put it, the line that I have recently, started saying to myself is that achievement can feel very noisy from the outside, right? And very quiet on the inside, Shivangi, right? Like you see announcements, titles, promotions, award, but privately underneath all of that, um, again, this is not imposter syndrome, right? This is something over and beyond that. You are constantly wondering, am I on the right path? Is this path still going to lead me where I want to go? Am I still becoming? I hope I'm not stagnating. I hope I'm not stuck in the rut. So that's the messy part of achievement, I would say. It looks quite a lot from the outside when you attend like the Thrive event, last week. But then from the inside, you still feel like, I still have a long way to go.
Yeah, and this is the fascinating thing, right? And that's where also, and to be honest, I relate so much to that journey that you mentioned, right?
Mm,
Because I went through that same thing of being quite a high performing, high achieving corporate leader, then reinventing myself to be an entrepreneur and a
mm,
solopreneur at that, then
exactly.
founding a nonprofit,
Mhm,
then becoming an author. And it's like,
mm,
it's always this move of reinventing, and from the outside
mm.
it looks like, oh my god, this is amazing, what all can you
Yeah,
do in terms of reimagining your identity, because that's what it is
correct.
essentially, right? But there is this inner drive, and as you say, inner
Mhm,
resilience as you do all of those reinventions, that you
mhm,
keep questioning. And that's where, to be honest, I've been thinking about, for Wonder Woman, curating
mhm,
spaces
mhm.
where highly accomplished women, they pause together. Because, like you said, Shami, inside us is always this
Yeah,
next goalpost, right? But
yeah,
this whole idea of work and identity transformation,
exactly,
especially from somebody who studies like learning, leadership, well-being, why do
exactly.
you think transformation often needs like a circle, a place, a time away from
Mm.
everyday roles?
Yeah, I think why. So one thing I always say, and I think your work and also what you're trying to do here sort of talks to the heart of that. Transformation needs interruption, right? By interruption, I mean incubation, right? So everyday life keeps us inside the roles we do, like your corporate role, right? Great, high achiever, done it all, etc. And now, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, or as somebody who is navigating the space, with Thrive, sort of being the problem solver, the person everybody goes to, or coming up with new disruptive technologies or new disruptive things, right? The point is that you need a good pause. By pause, I don't mean stopping, right? Like most people think, oh, it's like, taking a leave or stopping or, sort of taking a vacation. No, this is over that, right? A retreat creates a pause in the system, a place that is away from your everyday roles, that allows you to encounter yourself, quite differently. So a circle matters because, the transformation is rarely pure individual. You are the product of your social environment, right? So we need people to witness our thresholds, basically. So a good retreat is not a break. It's a different kind of a learning environment, I would say. It's a learning, transformative environment. You know,
And essentially that is exactly what I'm trying to curate. And to
correct.
curate
Hmm.
that, you almost need to be in a circle who, I mean,
Correct.
you and me resonated. We've met once, right? But
Correct.
it doesn't feel like, and
Exactly.
we
That we have
feel like
only
we
met
just
once.
resonate. Our
Yeah.
wavelengths just match
Mm.
at so many levels. And it
Yeah.
doesn't feel as if I've not even
Hmm.
spoken to you, for a
Hmm.
few months when I get into this conversation with you, right? So
Hmm.
being surrounded, as you said, this whole collective reckoning that we
Hmm.
require by people, by
Hmm.
women in this case, who get it, right? I think
Hmm.
that has its
Hmm.
own beauty and its own power, but at the
Hmm.
same time not having, the mask of the
Hmm.
presenter, the researcher, the successful,
Hmm.
academic person. And to be honest, and I, as you know, I'm designing my first retreat. I mean, I sit with all these questions, right,
Hmm.
around how to create that learning environment where the masks can be down, where the filters
Hmm.
can be down, where vulnerability is high, but we know
Hmm.
that everybody in the room is very high achieving, so it's
Correct.
going to be an interesting, experiment
Correct.
for sure. There is
Absolutely.
no doubt
And you
about
know
it.
what you are designing and suggesting over here is that's why I said, something like this slows your nervous system down. It creates psychological safety, Shivangi. It allows reflection that is embodied and not just intellectual, right? I mean, intellectually we can talk a lot, right? But it gives women the permission to ask questions they might not ask in boardrooms, in classroom, on leadership development programs, right? Share what they are carrying with them, the version of success that they are ready to outgrow, or maybe have already outgrown, Chivangi, right? Like yourself, you had already outgrown the very successful corporate leader version of yourself, and you chose to trust yourself again and redo things that you might otherwise as a corporate leader might not have done.
That
So
is true. And that is the witnessing part, right?
yeah.
Witnessing by somebody then self
Yeah.
validates these beliefs. I talk a lot about self belief.
Correct.
And I think that the self belief, yes, a mentor can be amazing and I think has their value, but they also have their own reality, right? When
Yeah.
you are, and again, you speak a lot about collective versus individual learning and how systems learn, right?
Correct.
I wanted to, dig a little bit deeper into that, right? For high achieving women, especially, especially women who are used to carrying things alone, because you probably are not in rooms where there are so many, women of color or, Wonder Women existing. Probably you're the only one in the systems. And as your work moves from, more into like business partnerships and executive
Mm,
partnerships, etc., you probably become even more alone in the room, right? So I'm curious to explore a little bit around that, right? For
mm,
high achieving women who are used to carrying things alone,
mm,
what becomes possible, do you think,
mm,
when they are in a room where they do not need to perform competence, where their authority, their competence is not questioned at all, but then
mm.
can actually be witnessed?
Yeah, I mean, and I can talk from my own experience, especially even something as small, and it's not small in any way, Shivangi, but even, the Thrive events that I attend, for example, and that's why I make it a point, to have that in my diary, but also go out of my way to attend them. It's just because this is what it exactly does, right? Like it helps you put down your armor. I think I have seen all of us, right? So things that I can say that I have been carrying alone, for example, I can admit to things. I can admit to exhaustion, uncertainty. I can admit to the weaknesses. I can admit to the failures. I can admit to the point of connection that mattered. So therefore, this kind of, thing like being witnessed, or when high achieving women sort of enter a room where performance competence is not the main thing. The idea is that you don't have your armor, so you have your guard down, in as simple term as that, right? We need spaces where women can truly reflect back, not only what we have achieved, but also what we have survived and what we are longing for, right? And what we are ready to sort of become and ready to let go as well. I think those matter deeply, and those conversations, I can tell you, and I wish, and I think maybe you and I should design that, now that laughing, but I wish leadership programs were more about that. I wish MBA was more about this, right? But it isn't, so the circle sort of becomes a sort of a map where we often, therefore, are able to reflect on these stories. Other women's stories sort of become your oxygen, becomes your purpose, becomes your, permission. And therefore, that sort of reflects into each other. That's what I
Yeah, I
feel,
mean, I can so rightly, you've really pinpointed because I've been running a few Wonder Woman circles. These are only like 2 hour events, and I've
Mm,
done them in multiple countries,
mm,
repeatedly in Switzerland, but I've also tried in places like Dubai, right? Very
yeah,
different culture, expat population,
exactly.
lots of Wonder Women.
Exactly.
And then I keep thinking about, what happens, and clearly, and they talk about, Kairos time, right? It's as if there is something
Yeah.
warped that happens when we
Mm,
feel connected, and I want to go
mm,
back to that whole idea of embodied presence, right? This whole
mm,
idea, because we are, as high achieving women, definitely high achieving Wonder Women,
mhm,
extremely
mm,
cerebral and cognitively orientated. I'm
mm.
wondering, was there a moment your own body gave you data before your mind accepted it?
Yes. I mean, in terms of, if you're talking about my own sort of body, as in, just the physical embodiment as well, you're talking
Yeah, yeah,
about?
I am talking
Yeah.
about the physicality,
Yeah.
because sometimes your body tells you things. Usually it's our mind sort of running everything else, right? Whereas sometimes there is data that comes from the body. And I think that that needs a lot of psychological safety, the
Yeah.
ability to be in a non-performative and only,
Yeah.
authentic presence where
Yeah.
you're not being judged.
Yeah.
All of that, right? Everything that I think a
Correct.
circle or a retreat
Circle.
embodies,
Yeah.
right? But it can
Absolutely.
happen also outside of that. I'm wondering, did you have any such moment? Not that you
Yeah.
might have had, but
I've had both positive and negative, right? So just as example, there have been times my body or my mind just refuses to interact, right? Like I have reached points of exhaustion, Shivangi, where exhaustion is not just your atypical burnout, but exhaustion is like, I've had it enough, right? Like I don't want to have extra communication. I don't want to go out. I don't want to network. Finding network exhausting, for example, small talk exhausting. I mean, up until you approach me, Thrive approach me, I wasn't socializing. I wasn't going out because, my body was telling me, you've had it enough. Because maybe I've not been part of that kind of circle where I was able to get all those things out, talk to people, talk to similar women like myself, where everything was accumulating so much inside that ultimately then the body says, enough is enough, full stop, kind of a thing. I've been there. And at the same time, I've also been where just that 1 hour of invigorated conversation in the right circle, say for example, our meeting, right? Like I was that day, even at the first event, I was like, yeah, okay, going. I had not checked out what it was all about at Thrive Edinburgh when you had arrived. And honestly, I was just going to think that it's just going to be breeze in, breeze out. I had not thought I would going to stay throughout the entire event, Shivangi, or even have a conversation. And then next day in the morning, even meet up with you before heading out to gym and before you taking your flight back, right? So it's both positive and negative, right? Like something that just gets you completely enough is enough, to a certain other body interaction, which was like, oh, come on, let's go. That energy, that feel. Yes, I want to speak to Shivangi. Yes, I think I have met somebody like minded. Yes, I think we can talk about experiences. Yes, I think I can listen and she can listen and we are there to witness each other, right?
yeah, and there
Even
is
that
this
happens.
energetic exchange, right? Because I think
Exactly.
that that's what happens at a body level that a lot of us
Exactly.
don't get it. And I think all this remote working, as much as I love to have you on on the
That's
Zoom
true.
and doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, how much
Yeah.
fun would it be to be in the same room, right?
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think that that is something that is gravely missing.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think we all realize it, and the practicality of everything sort
Hmm.
of,
Hmm.
matters. I mean, like you, I deliver a lot
Yeah.
of leadership programs, and I
Yeah.
see the clear difference between doing it,
Hmm.
virtually versus doing it in person.
Hmm.
It's like there
Hmm.
is no comparison, right? And that
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
because of what we call the energetic body, right? And if
Hmm.
the energetic body is aligned to the mind, it
Hmm.
really then performs, and manifests itself, where
Hmm.
new things can emerge. I feel that the challenging thing, and of course our setup is a bit different now because I'm inquiring
Hmm.
into you, right? But in most meetings, etc., when I attend
Hmm.
virtually, we know the agenda, we know what we are talking about, and
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
all. That's all that happens, right? Whereas a
Correct.
physical meeting, like you and we
Yeah.
had in Edinburgh, something new emerge, right? Something new
Hmm.
can come out of it, and I feel
Hmm.
that it's very challenging for that to
Hmm.
emerge when you have a
Yeah.
meeting with goals and agendas, because there is
Yeah.
no freedom for what else can emerge in
Hmm.
that space. So it's really
Hmm.
something that we need to consider, I feel, right?
Exactly.
um
Exactly.
what is something, Shami, to be true about building a life on your own terms that you could not have told me 10 years ago?
Hmm. You know, building life on your own terms, Shivangi, is more about unlearning rather than planning. I think my mother here was very right. If you had met the Charmi in her teens and in her early 20s, even late 20s, like I did my PhD when I was 26, right? Which was pretty early. And at that time as well, like, if you had me, I'll have everything chalked out, right? Like very OCD in that sense, right? This is my short term goal. This is my long term goal. This is what I need to do. This is the publication I need. These are the companies I want to talk to for consultancy. This is what, at 30, I think I was 28 or 27, 28 when I bought my first apartment in Edinburgh, right? I said, I want my own home, just because I felt that emancipated women, right, to have your own place, not co owned, So I had everything chalked down, right? And now the actual achievements, the actual breakthroughs that have truly taken place in terms of my ambition, goals, discipline, making the right strategic moves, they have all been unplanned. They have all been about unlearning, So unlearning the need to be endlessly planning, but endlessly pleasing people, unlearning the belief that gratitude means accepting less, so you can have gratitude but you can also be very ambitious, unlearning the idea that success has to look impressive from the outside, to be meaningful on the inside, all of this, right? So there are things that people tell you, that this is what it should be and this is what it should be, but no, building a life on your own terms also requires the courage to disappoint people, to disappoint your own planning, to disappoint your own sort of cruelty, but honestly acknowledging that authentic life or building something authentic is beyond your expectation. It's beyond your planning. It's unlearning constantly, and yet be ready for the next adventure. Like yourself, right? Like a lot of unlearning. Who wants to quit a great cushiony corporate job, right? But you have to be able to unlearn and be able to become the most authentic version of yourself. So I would say unlearning.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Shami, I
Shivangi.
want to move towards a rapid fire round. I
Okay.
want to move towards just asking you three questions and that you
Mm-hmm.
can use, in terms of promoting the episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, Shami, tell me one word for what the hardest year of your career taught you. One sentence rather than a word.
Surrender.
Surrender. You do have a
Yeah.
word. The
Let go.
advice you were given that turned out to be completely wrong.
I think this is for all women, not just myself. Keep your head down and let the work speak for itself. You know what? That's wrong. And this is what most men tell women because they don't want us to advertise for ourselves, right? So the work matters, but the work does not always speak in systems, Shivangi, that are not designed to hear everyone equally, especially women of color. You also need voice, you also need visibility, you also need sponsors, you also need a strategy and the courage to name your contribution. So don't believe the bullshit that the men tell you keep your head down and let the work speak for itself. The work will not speak for itself till you advocate that that's the work you have done and make it visible.
Oh, this is something I so agree with. And finish this sentence. I wish someone had told me that success could also mean.
Success would also mean outgoing versions of myself that I had worked very hard to actually become.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been brilliant as expected. Thank you for your time, Shami.
Thank you so much, Shivangi. It's always a pleasure connecting with you. Your work is great. The amount of upliftment you're already doing before, launching the retreats, the circle, the thrive, and so many other things that you're constantly doing is helping a lot more people than you actually realize. So thank you so much for unapologetically becoming yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shami.
Thank you.